Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Dean, have you been to the DMV lately?
Yes.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago. Well, is that lately?
I mean,
about 2 years ago.
It's about as lately as I want to get with
But
something
Ohio's
like
doing those 6-year licenses,
Oh,
which I'm
yeah,
super pumped
yeah.
about, so I don't have to go there as often.
the real
as I used
ID
to.
type stuff.
The real ID.
Yeah, I did that recently. Well, again, a couple years ago too.
Yeah.
Did you have to get have you had to get a permit for anything recently at all?
Why? What? No, it's like pulling teeth. It's really
Yeah,
difficult.
See,
you
you're
know?
getting the hint here a little bit.
Okay.
Because most people hate the DMV.
Yes.
Getting permits is a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
Anything related to local government and bureaucracy is.
Yes.
It kind of gets a lot of flack for being very slow, ponderous.
and rightfully slow. So
That's right. It's not unjustified at all.
It's not.
But, I'm sure that the people who work in those positions, they probably don't really enjoy what makes everything slow and ponderous and difficult,
they
too.
would like to be more efficient,
Yeah,
more customer friendly.
I would assume.
I would
yeah.
hope so. Yes.
I would hope they don't do this just because, out of spite or anything, So the point of this is because we're kind of talking about this today.
Yeah.
Maybe smarter tech might be the solution to some of those issues.
All right.
So we're talking about modernizing municipalities today.
Got it.
We have Tami Wanless on with us from DACRA Tech.
Yep.
She's going to help us kind of dive in and talk a little bit about what local officials are dealing with, kind of processes that are slow and cumbersome that they probably want some help with. We're going to talk about what modernization actually means in the context of local government. We're going to talk
Modernizing local government. I'm sorry. It feels like it's a
I know.
dichotomy, so I can't wait to dive into this.
I agree. Again, anyone who's listening to this is probably rolling their eyes like, yeah, right. Government, modern, whatever. We're going to talk a little bit about VARs and how they can play in this and maybe why they shouldn't be steering clear of government if there's somebody that's a little hesitant about it.
Good.
And we're going to talk about DACRA's approach to this whole thing, too. So you can understand a little bit more about their tech. Yeah. So good. I think we're going to have a fun conversation.
All right. Fair enough. I'm in.
Maybe at the end of this, we'll have some solutions that will make a trip to the DMV or getting a permit not such a nightmare.
Pleasurable.
Exactly.
There you go. Yeah, all right.
There's my advice for VARs right there. Like, if you do this in your community, your life may get better because of it. Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you?
And you make some money along the way.
Think of your children, for crying out loud. Yeah.
Exactly. All that plus our usual value to the VAR and what's tech connected with us. It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, as I mentioned, our guest for today is Tami Wanless. She is the Chief Operating Officer for DACRA Tech. Tami, welcome to the show. We love having you on here. Tell us a little about yourself, your background, and what do you do day to day at DACRA?
Great. Thanks, John. Thanks, Dean. Appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast today. I am born and raised in Chicago. Been with DACRA Tech for almost 4 years, and the background, I started out in education, and so that's kind of the heart of what I'm going to talk a little bit about today is education and communication. And I didn't come from the government space, so it's been refreshing, as you said, going from private sector to government, because there's a lot of difference between those. Government can sometimes be the unicorn in the sales cycle, but I feel like we've done a great job of navigating through that and have some excellent solutions and really enjoy partnering with the lot of VARs that we currently have through BlueStar. So looking forward to giving you those solutions today and talking a little bit more about modernizing. I know that seems like an oxymoron, as Dean alluded to, but I'm looking forward to sharing those solutions with you guys today.
You're already a warrior. I mean, right? To go from private into the government, it's usually the inverse. People are like, fleeing government, get out of here. So
and education to government, too.
Right?
I mean, again, two different industries that have their own set of different issues and problems and bureaucratic nightmares.
There you go.
So.
Yeah.
But I always appreciate someone that makes a leap from one industry to another because I feel like you get to bring a fresh perspective.
Oh, 100%.
Like, I've never worked in the same industry twice. So, I get that. I think it's nice to shake things up and change it a bit. So
there you go.
All right. Well, Tami, let's get this kicked off here. Let's talk about, we just had the midterm elections recently. And a lot of local officials were on the ballot for a lot of folks in a lot of areas. Mm-hmm. And those people may have a big impact on what happens in communities. Those are important elections. But what are those officials facing as they now take office or are going to be taking office soon and all these challenges laid out in front of them? What kind of challenges are out there for local officials to, manage what's happening in local government?
Yeah, John. So interestingly enough, government officials, like many leaders across the nation, are really coping with critical staffing shortages. The absence affects every position in the municipality, whether, that's records clerks, finance department, building code inspectors, community service officers. And I just read recently in, oh, meet my coworker. Hold on.
No problem.
Um, she sleeps most of the day, but other than that, she's good to work with. So this absence, affects everybody. But I was just reading that in Police Executive Research Forum that a survey in 2021 showed a 45% increase in retirements and an 18% jump in resignations. So, departments are struggling to retain and recruit police officers. They're canceling days off. The people that work in municipalities, they have a heart to serve, but they're really stretched thin, and they're putting in long hours, extra overtime, and that has an impact on that budget, right? So if they are, if they're putting in extra time, it's affecting that budget, over time. Also, it leads to employee burnout. So all these factors threaten the quality of life in our communities. So, officials are tasked with maintaining a balanced budget, but the one thing they can't take away from is emergency responses. So they have to find a way to improve that culture, reduce those retirements, and that'll help, change the culture and maybe attract a better workforce, a stronger workforce. So the more modern that municipality becomes, the more attractive they become when recruiting police officers and staff. And then if they'll be more efficient, and that's better for the community as a whole.
Not immune to the rest of the world,
No,
right?
no.
And what the rest of the world is what I'm hearing.
I've yet to find an industry
right?
yet that isn't dealing with staffing problems.
Right, right. Or the need to modernize,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And be like that lure that brings in top talent. Well, and when you think about top talent, it's going to really be hard for government officials because typically it's not, if I'm a striving, I want to go work for Google or I don't know. You think of the high end, whatever. Oh no, come work for the mayor's office.
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
To your point, Tami, they usually do have a heart of gold and their heart's in the right spot, right? Where they want to be a public servant. They want to do well, especially our firefighters and police officers. And I mean, why do that job unless you have that heart of gold and doing that? So, but not unique to the staffing concerns or what's happening. I mean, retirement, we've talked about, generational gaps and what's happening there. And it's happening, right?
Yeah,
it happens everywhere. Yeah.
Well, and we talked about, I think, with healthcare on a recent episode. Unlike some industries where staffing shortage, sure, every industry has staffing shortages, has problems because of it. But if I get my cheeseburger a little slower than usual, it's not that big of a deal. Versus in healthcare and in government, and again, especially in emergency services, emergency response, where staffing shortages and stuff not operating as quickly and smoothly as you would like can lead to harm and death, and that's not something you want to happen.
Well, that's a really good point that Tami brought up, in the fact that any of these government officials, they have a budget, and they have a duty at least on the emergency services to serve the public, right? So it's not like they can't just walk away from that,
right?
You can't just
they can't just say, well, whatever, it's going to take a month.
We're going to shut down that end of our business.
Right,
it's not profitable. It's too hard getting people there, So we're not going to have fire, right, Tami? I mean, they've got that unique.
We're not going to worry about fire codes this month. We'll just skip it this month. No big deal. It's
Can't
fine.
do that.
Yeah.
Can't do that. So that makes government unique, right, Tami?
Absolutely. One of the things is government municipalities, they never stop working. They run 24/7, 365 a year. And when you constantly have your foot on the gas pedal, you really aren't built to pivot or be nimble, right? Government agencies are designed to stay the course, and they're more like a school bus turning a corner than a Porsche, right? So that's part of the problem, I think, when we look at modernizing municipalities. I think when I talk to a lot of ours, they say, government agencies are so stuck. And the reason is twofold. One is they're always moving. So nobody says, hey, I'm really excited to implement new software and get some new hardware, right? Nobody says that. One of the things at DACRA Tech is we get that. We understand that you're working 24/7. You don't have time to stop and pause and catch your breath. So, that's one factor in why municipalities are so slow to adopt new technology and innovation, um, compared to other industries. But the other factor that you touched on earlier, John, is that there's frequent leadership changes. And every newly elected administrator comes in with new goals, new priorities, and a vision. But that is tied to the budget from 2 years ago,
Right.
right? And so what I mean by that is, a new police chief might start and he might have 40 squads in his fleet, but they don't have MDTs or software or printers in their squad cars. So he might have this vision, but it's going to have to wait until the budget cycle catches up. And I think that's one of the most frustrating parts for VARs, when looking in the government space, is how do we help them modernize, and get the money they need allocated for technology within that budget cycle.
Well, you've obviously already mentioned, the slowness of adopting things, and the fact that a new administration might take over and operating on an old budget, or maybe have new ideas that would need a new implementation. And again, to your point, also the idea of figuring out a way to interrupt a nonstop cycle of work to start a new. I mean, we talked about this in supply chain before. The reason why like warehouses and supply chain and distributors don't tend to upgrade and do new technology that very often is because how do you shut down a facility that needs to move a certain amount of boxes and a certain amount of packages or whatever out in and out every day, so that you can throw up a whole new system or whatever. I mean, that could be millions of dollars that are being lost over a short amount of time. So obviously, modern is not exactly a term that most people associate with local governments.
No.
And their process. We've joked about it, but it simply is true. Is there anything else that's holding them back? Anything else that's slowing down these officials and these institutions from being able to take on the kind of technology that we would, us and our VARs would love to be able to sell to them?
Sure. Technology can be intimidating. So one of the things that we look at when we are working with a municipality is communication and education. You guys know in technology, a lot of times they're gravitating towards our younger kids, right? Because they're born with an iPad in their hand. So some of the things that we work with municipalities is they're recruiting younger people, how to use that technology to springboard the municipality forward and really streamline and utilize the people that are present, the people that are working overtime and that are spread thin. And so working, the phrase smarter, not harder, using iPads and license plate recognition to quickly issue a parking ticket in, less than 3 clicks. Those types of things, I think really are going to help modernize. And once they see that efficiency, we had a municipality that had a parking lot that they used to, issue 80 tickets a day, the manual way. And after implementing the software, using a tablet device, using portable printers, they were able to increase that ticket volume. And ultimately, we're very cautious. It's not about issuing tickets, it's about compliance. And so, as the community service officer or police officer is able to issue those tickets, it's helping people be more compliant.
And I like where you're going on the adapting of new tech. I think there's hope out there in the sense that, when this younger generation comes, they're just going to demand new tech.
Right.
And it's going to, because they can't operate in a world that's not that. So there's going to be opportunities, right?
I always think, the one clear example that always sticks out to me is anytime I do go to vote, and you walk into your polling place, and let's be honest, most of the time it's senior citizens that are staffing those places because they've got the time and ability to do so. Right. But, and then I also look at that and think, man, there's so many opportunities for more modern technology in our voting process. In some places we'll have some voting machines, and some places are more modern than others when it comes to that. But I look at that and go, well, let's be honest, part of the problem is not only do you have to bring in senior citizens, to do this, but then if you want to try to train them to use this modern technology that they're not comfortable with and equipped with, because I always hear it every time there's an election cycle, you always hear a call for like, hey, let's try to get younger people in to work in the polling places and again, be able to adapt to new technology. But to your point, I think until, a generation kind of ages through and cycles through and, I guess to some extent our generation, but definitely younger generations get into the age where they can be more a part of government and bureaucracy and and have that calling to do this stuff, they're going to be the folks, to your point, that they want it, they need the technology. Like this is life requires this technology, so let's implement it all across the board here too.
Yeah.
And of course, by the time that happens, there'll be even younger generations with newer technology,
Exactly.
better that they'll be reticent about. Then at that point, like, no, I don't want
Never
VR
ending.
in here. Yeah,
Never
exactly.
ending. Yeah, right.
I think, John, one of my favorite stories is we had a hearing officer that I believe was in late 70s, early 80s, right? And was really resistant to technology. And so, it became my passion to have them really embrace technology and see how software and hardware can really make a difference for them, right? So see the value. This hearing officer has become our biggest cheerleader because looking at that process and being able to view evidence quickly, look at a location quickly, they saw how easy it was to use and not so intimidating. And, if the software is intuitive or the hardware, works consistently, it's going to be so much easier to adapt. And it's almost like the domino effect. I always say once we had this hearing officer trained in the software and, he's out singing our high praises, it it shows other people that the technology is easy in there, and try to break down those barriers where people say I'm not a techie, right? So every training session people start out, I'm not a techie, and I say great, then you're going to love this because it's really easy to use.
That's it.
That's
Yeah.
a powerful thing to be able to tell somebody.
is,
Because to your point again, I think there's a lot of things that call people into public service. Being technologist is probably not one.
Not one of them. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. They just want an easier workflow.
Right. There's industries that you go into if you're someone that's big into technology and just want to be using
sure.
technology all the time.
Yeah.
I think most of us assume there's going to be some level of technology in most jobs that we enter these days. But yeah, again, I think a lot of people that that go into this particular line of work, they're not necessarily someone who's all expected to be or known to be a high-tech person. So I think anytime you can go to someone and say, okay, you're not super tech savvy, that's fine.
That's fine.
We got
Yeah.
you covered anyway.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is going
yeah.
to be nice and easy to use.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a good story to tell. Well, then that kind of leads me a little bit into like our VARs, obviously, and how they approach these matters, because we want them to be the person that gets to go and talk to someone and say, hey, we'll make this easy for you.
Yeah, right.
This won't be a complicated, long process.
Yep.
But also a lot of VARs, though, kind of treat government as like they stay away from it because it's
a monolith.
Yeah, it's a monolith. It's slow, cycles. It's a lot of red tape. It's complex bid processes.
New boss every other year.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh my gosh.
It's one of those things. Tami, you mentioned it up front that there's a kind of a golden ticket opportunity there, and they know that, like, man, if you get one of these deals, you get some great money out of it, and usually a lot of recurring revenue for a long time too.
Yeah.
But a lot of ours get discouraged because getting to that point seems like almost impossible. So what's your advice for them? For anyone who's like, I'd like to do this, but why?
Yeah, great question, John. So coming from the private sector into the government was very eye-opening for me. Looking at the length of that sales cycle, like many of the VARs, I was discouraged. What do you mean it takes years to groom a sale, right? What I've learned is that patience really pays off, and here's why. Working with government municipalities, it's a long-term investment. So nobody loves change, but government really doesn't like change. And so if you use that as a leveraging point, in other words, when they do come with you, they come with you, right? So as you fill that sales funnel, I've learned that government agencies are loyal. They like to work with technology, but they need a partner that can support them through every step, beginning with the budgeting and implementation. They don't know what they don't know. And so working with someone that can help understand their industry and then say, these are the solutions you need. So knowing the agency's budget cycle, I mean, if you've got somebody that, isn't up for new equipment or new software for 7 years, keeping that relationship, but focusing on those that maybe are ready and in a budget cycle. Listening to what their specific problem is before you provide the solution. A lot of times we come with a hardware solution and go, you need this, but we're not listening to what their problem is. So taking the time to, discover what do they really need? What's the pain point? articulate your value and unique differentiators. That those are the things that might not be listed in the RFP, right? So when you're grooming through an RFP, you're thinking, oh, this is a good fit for me. But talking to them about, what's the value of going with our hardware? What's different than what they're currently using? What don't they like with what they're using? You can earn more business if you provide more than just hardware. You provide support and education. A lot of times when I'm working with people that with a printer, they need to understand how to calibrate it. Where do they go to get service? And then it's a much better experience for them. Again, you're talking to a community that's not used to setting up technology. And most of them, especially smaller municipalities, they don't have an IT department. The police chief is the IT department, right? So, breaking those things down so that you have that relationship, and that can sometimes bring unexpected sales, so be prepared to win sometimes. And what I mean by that is, I think we've all had an experience where a deadline approaches and a municipality will give me a call and say, I need to spend some money, right? So you want to have that rapport so they pick up the phone and call you first, and trust that you know what they need and have that relationship. So the patience, that's what I'm talking about, is they might not buy today, but having you be the industry expert, you to be the resource, that's the value with government sales cycle.
It can be frustrating, right?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
you're like working the account, and it just takes a long time. Back when I worked for a VAR, we did have a couple of government contracts, and they took a long time. I mean, the
Right,
sales cycle
right.
was like really, really long, but the payoff is there, right? I mean, because we won one of the largest convention centers in the Cincinnati area, and in deploying our technology, and that led to other, it opened up other doors, because
Right.
now, we became a safe bet, and we understood the environment, and it does have those payoffs, Tammy. I agree with you that, it might be a little bit frustrating, and I think your advice was awesome in the sense that, understanding where they are in the buy cycle, if there's 6-7 years down there, okay, maintain relationship, but maybe this one's a little hotter, especially if you're first getting into it, until you get those in your, in your workflow,
Right.
and understand where they are. Relationship building, really, really key.
Yeah. Basically what I just heard from Tammy is selling to government is not that much different to selling to a lot of other industries.
It's just a longer cycle
Consultative
sometimes.
selling,
Yeah, right. There you
emphasize your value adds, be a trusted advisor, be the person that they want to call first whenever there's a problem or they need something.
Yeah.
It's just to your point, like you just have to be a little more patient. You have to, you can't expect the quick turnaround and the quick dollar. It might have a little more headaches to it, but ultimately what you're doing, your day-to-day work and how you approach that being a value-added reseller, it's all the same. I mean, you're still doing the same thing. You just, again, like, I guess if you're someone who just wants to, turn a buck and turn a project into a sale as quick as possible, okay, maybe government's not for you. But, if you truly want to be good at this and you want to be someone that truly is looked at as someone that can be trusted, someone that can be relied upon for tech issues of any kind, well, then again, this is no different than hopefully what you're doing in every other industry that you sell into.
Yeah, and I like the phrase that you had, Tammy, support all the way through every step of the process, right? So, like resellers, if they don't know this by now, and their ability to grow their business comes through their partnerships that they have, and like a DACRA Tech is really going to help you, get into the door within these government organizations with a real solution,
Right?
That they can provide that, through every step of the process, not just the pre-sale, not just the sale, but then also the post-sale ability to do that. So
Exactly. And I like your point too from your VAR days about becoming the safe bet.
Yeah,
because again, these complicated processes for RFPs and for bidding and all this stuff, they don't like that, I'm sure, any more than you, the VAR, does.
They don't.
Those people don't. They don't
We've
enjoy
had
having
Jeff
to do all
Smith
that.
on. Remember?
Yeah.
We've had these conversations with him. It's like, no, it's a nightmare to get 100 responses to an RFI.
Right. So imagine how good they must feel when they know, like, hey, there's somebody we can go to and lean on,
That's
or someone that when we put this out there and if we get their bid back and their, their documentation back, we know that there's someone we can rely on, and they get moved to the top of the stack pretty quickly because of that. Yeah. Again, be that person, become that person, and you're kind of set for a while.
That's right.
Even through, I know, again, you might have administration changes and people changes or whatever, but again, I would think a lot of those folks, when they come in new, if someone on the outgoing, or if they've looked through some files and find out, hey, company X was instrumental in getting all of this stuff up and running, who do you think they're going to call 1st? They're not going to say, well, screw company X, I'm going to call company Y now instead. No, I mean, unless, I don't know, their brother works for company Y maybe, but otherwise they're probably going back to what they're familiar with.
Yeah. Tami, let's dive in a little bit on the bid process real quick, because I'm sure you've seen more than your fair share of bids, right, that have come through, right? And so I always had like a little stable of information, because a lot of the RFPs ask for the same kind of rudimentary information, right. How long you've been in business, blah, 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 blah. So it's good to have some of those block things that you can just kind of place in there, maybe tweak them a little bit because you're dealing with somebody, there's some nuance in this municipality and that city government or whatever. But it was always, for me, it was always helpful to have that kind of at the ready. Are there any other tips? Because I know, I can remember when I was a reseller and you received that sheet, of, hey, here's this opportunity or a bid, that's put out, and it's 20 pages and you got to navigate through the daggone thing, right? Do you have any other tips or tricks? Because I know that, I'll just restate it, that's one of the hard things for a VAR to do.
Yeah, it really is, to navigate through that RFP. And I think everybody listening can identify the decision maker in government is consistently inconsistent. And what I mean by that is, this could be the city manager, it could be the police chief. We've had people as the finance director, right? So you want to look at who's driving that project and hit those sweet spots. So whether it's we have the city of Chicago, and who drove that project and that RFP was the adjudication team. So what was important to them, right? Sometimes we have an RFP template that's a one size fits no one, right, Dean? I mean, you're right. You're plugging and playing, but really taking the time to figure out who's driving that project will really customize your answers, and that way it hits their sweet spot, not necessarily the overall.
That's a great tip right there. Yeah. Understanding who owns the process, if you will, and conforming your pitch or your message to suit that. It's an awesome advice.
Completely agree.
Because it's a group buy in a lot of, right? You're going to have a lot of people that need to nod their head yes, but at the end of the road there is a ringleader, usually. Right. And they'll give you clues, exactly what they're looking for. Or at least that's what I would do. A lot of RFP processes have a Q&A portion, that's open. And I would be very direct. What is it exactly? All this is great. I used to love the ones that were in person, because then you could have a conversation what is it you're really looking to do here? Because I think we can do what you're looking for, but I want to make sure we're hitting the nail on the head, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Yeah.
Here's a plug for previous episodes of the podcast too. Go back to some of that stuff we did with James Cordy about the challenge customer. We talked about how to tackle buying groups and how to figure out how to sell and market to B2B. I mean, that's again. It's not that different just because it's government. It's going to be the same kind of thing. There's a bunch of people who might be involved in this. Find your ones that can help you champion your cause. Find the ones who are really the decision makers. Find the ones who are going to be the naysayers that you got to persuade or stay away from, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's not that much different than other potential industries you might be selling into.
Yeah. So, really good point.
Well, let's talk about DACRA itself then, and Tami, which I'm sure you love to talk about. What's your approach to modernizing municipalities? So, how do you help resellers to go to market? Which solutions are natural fits with their usual hardware and service offerings? So, where do you guys work with our VAR audience?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, and I am super excited to talk about it. So, DACRA Tech software, we are symbiotic with hardware, and what I mean by that is we need hardware. Most of my customers say, I have no idea what hardware to get. Tell me what I need to do. So what our software does is it provides one place for every person in that municipality, whether that's the police officer, records clerk, finance, building code, and even the city manager, to work within one software. And as simple as that sounds, most municipalities are pretty siloed. Building code has a software, police have a software, finance has a software. No one is communicating together. They might be happy in their own little world. The problem comes when we try to do data collection. They get a FOIA request. The council's looking for some data. We have to pull it from all these different areas. A resident comes in and has a question. Oh, that I can get from this software or this software. What DACRA Tech does is pull all of those departments together and they function in one platform. So we can, set up different departments: police department, building code, fire department, health, animal department. We can set those departments all up in one software. So visual acuity, everyone sees the same thing. They're all working harmoniously in one system. Doesn't mean they can see each other's, data. It just means that it's better for administration. So we teach municipalities the power of technology and the power of data. It's kind of an area that's not tapped into in government. We really think that transparency is at the heart of what everyone is doing now. And, like I said, FOIA requests, media is constantly asking our customers, hey, we need some data. How many tickets were issued on this street on Tuesdays? We can peel that apart, where before that was a real manual process. So let me ask you guys a question so you can understand what DACRA Tech does a little bit more. You guys ever received a speeding ticket?
Unfortunately, a couple.
Yeah,
A couple in my life. Yeah,
Yes.
it's been a while, but yes.
Okay, good. Knock on some wood right
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about that process. I mean, in the past, what they used to do is manually write a ticket, right? What we did when DACRA started almost 30 years ago is we looked at that process. The idea is to reduce that traffic stop. The reason we want to reduce that is twofold. One, the longer the officer's out of his vehicle, the higher his risk for an accident. So we want to make that traffic stop as short as possible. That increases officer safety. But two, I think something that has been missing in the government arena is the customer experience. So think about when you got your ticket. You messed up, you were speeding. Now, the reason you were speeding is probably because you were late, right? And now you have to wait a really long time to get this ticket. You're probably thinking, I just want to get this done. So we talk a lot to municipalities about the customer experience, and whether that's a speeding ticket and getting me the ticket as fast as possible. We look at reducing traffic stops. We have municipalities time your traffic stop before you implement DACRA software, and then time it afterwards and see how much faster it is, right? That's number one. Two, there's a Pollyanna that lives deep inside my soul, and one of the reasons I gravitated towards this job is I love helping people. And you think, how can working with a software company help people? Adjudication tickets are prima facie evidence, and I always look at how do we help municipalities stay compliant with state statutes, but also help the recipient understand what they need to do. How do I pay that ticket? How do I dispute that ticket? What is the best way for me to do that as quickly as possible? So, as silly as it sounds, that customer experience is valuable to us. So, let's say you get your parking ticket. Now you want to know, how do I pay it? Right? And the nice thing about DACRA Tech is not only do we pull everybody together so the officer issues the ticket in DACRA Tech, one of the things that they can use is a scanning device for the driver's license. So whether that's embedded in the MDT or the laptop in the squad or on the side, they scan that driver's license and upload that information in DACRA Tech. Now what we're doing is reducing human error, and we're also making that process a lot faster. So using technology to reduce that traffic stop. From there, we're going to print out that ticket. We're going to print it on a 4-inch or an 8-inch printer in the squad car. Give it to the respondent. Now, the first thing, if I'm the respondent and I receive this ticket, is how do I pay this? What do I need to do? DACRA Tech's got 3 ways you can actually modernize the way people pay a ticket. And the first is we have an online payment portal. So I'm sitting in my car. I can log onto the website and pay my ticket on the side of the road if I want to, right? So that's one. 2, we put barcodes on our citations. So if a municipality has a kiosk in their lobby, they keep their lobby open, 365 days a year. I'm somebody that works night shifts and I want to come in and scan my ticket and pay it right there online. I can do that. So we're accommodating more customers. 3, you can pay in person, right? So if you have somebody maybe that doesn't know how to log online or doesn't want to use the kiosk in the lobby, they can pay with cash or check or set up a payment plan, and the cashier can easily look in the software, look up their ticket and make that payment right away or set up that payment plan. So our software follows that ticket all the way through the process. Issues, payment, now it's time for the hearing. The software is also part of that. So again, I said evidence, right? So if an officer takes a picture of the vehicle and the violation, the hearing officer can quickly look at that and say, oh yeah, you did park over the yellow line, or you were parked in the handicap section. All of that stays within that ticket. So the ticket becomes kind of like the file folder, if you will, of that particular citation. So whether I'm a records clerk and I have a question, the hearing officer, the police officer, it's all in one spot. Now, what we do is we've got the ticket, we've either paid it or we've gone to the hearing. Now, what happens? Well, we pull this data together and the software does all the hard work. Now, if in the unlikely situation that the respondent doesn't pay, maybe we're able to, if the ordinance supports it, run a boot list or an immobilization list and find out vehicles that are available for immobilization. We have heat mapping in our software. So what we can do is say, show me all the vehicles that are eligible for booting or immobilization. We heat map it. Now the community service officer can go around and manage those vehicles, whether they're immobilizing or towing, making it really easy and efficient. The last piece is that we'll follow it through. The software will give you all the notices and documents that you need to stay compliant. One of the things that I find when we're onboarding a new client is they're not adherent with state statutes. And so one of my delicate jobs is to explain, hey, I know you've been doing this for 30 years, but that doesn't mean it's right. So we use that opportunity to say, okay, you need to be sending these notices, and here's that Pollyanna piece, so that people do know that they had a parking ticket or what their rights are. And so the software does all that organically for them. So literally, records clerks log in and the software says, hey, guess what? Dean, you've got 4 notices that need to be printed today and sent out. Makes it super easy. Less laborious with keeping track of dates and times, because those are critical. So all of those notices get generated. We even have a mailing service. We'll do that for you, right? So we'll even, get them and print them and mail them for you. So the software will literally, once you issue that ticket, will follow that ticket all the way through and tell you what you need to do. And lastly is, I keep talking about the power of data. Looking at predictability. So what we want to teach municipalities is, how do we help people stay compliant? How do we help people stay safer? In our software, we like to support all the good things police officers do. So, for example, we have a crime prevention section. This is a police officer drives by John's house and sees his garage doors open at 2 in the morning. He can issue a notice in his squad car, put it on John's door, and say, hey, John, do you remember you left your garage door open? Please don't do that. The nice piece about that is, let's say 6 months down the road, there's a break-in on John's block. We can send a notice that says, hey, John, remember you left your garage door open? Don't do that. Right? So more of a preventative, right? And a good rapport with the citizens. We also have another piece in the software where officers can print a document, whether that's how to get access to a shelter, maybe Miranda rights in a second language, things that they used to have a brochure, using that technology to go ahead and print that. And again, creating that positive experience, reducing the amount of paper that municipalities have to use, and then making sure that they have that, and then being able to report it. So collecting traffic stop data is required, and the software will do all that for you. So literally, you click a button, have that report, and you upload it to the state. It's no longer that laborious process of, I need to go through all these tickets and find out, collecting all that traffic data stop. So, using the software to manage the reports. So what does DACRA do? We're more than an e-citation software. We do, that's the heart of what we do, but we follow that citation all the way through. And we really do need hardware to have our software. I always tell VARs, it's a symbiotic relationship. I can't work without you, and you and I, if we work together, we provide this positive environment for municipalities. And at the end of the day, it's about helping people.
So, Tami, a couple of real quick questions as it relates to that. Awesome, and thank you for the overview. I can see why that's a very powerful tool walking in the door and enabling folks. Is this an incremental, like, is this a build on top of an existing system, or are you saying that your system goes in and it's net new? And if it's net new, does it tie into other systems? I get the payment part, but if I'm a municipal clerk and I've already got my systems in place, is this just through APIs of plugging in, or what is that? What does an install look like from your perspective?
Yeah, great question, Dean. So, right, we do offer all of that functionality, but we also are happy to build APIs with an existing payment company or an existing collections company, or there's a lot of state hardware, the like Secretary of State. You can look up a driver's license. We easily can build those APIs, and because we've been around for a long time, there's not that many APIs that we haven't built yet. So that's nice for onboarding. We try to onboard in less than 3 months, which is much different than many of our competitors, and that's because we want to hit the ground running.
And I guess you guys provide support too, because now if you're enabling the officer with a new tool set, and they're probably a little bit tech savvy, but right, there's some learning curve that goes on there. Do you guys provide that as well?
Yeah. So education is the arena that I came from. So that is really a critical component in the onboarding process. What we have is we have retired police officers that are educators. And that way we go through that process and they're speaking the same language. And that way a police officer can ask a question that they're both going to be able to go back and forth with. And what we do is we set up a sandbox site. Before we go live, we train everybody in the sandbox so that municipality's got all their data in one spot. Before we go live, everybody's already issued a ticket. We make sure of it. So when we go live, the transition is very easy. And we keep that sandbox and all the training recordings for that municipality. So they have a new hire. It's a quick onboarding training. So that's a big strength in DACRA Tech is I always say we don't just dump the software. We are there to help you. We have a municipality going live tomorrow, and I just did a kickoff meeting today to get them ready. And she said, we don't feel like we're going into a new software because we've worked with it for the last 30 days that we're really comfortable with it.
Pretty smart. Yeah. I'm still having a hard time, Tami, giving over customer experience and government, like improved customer experience. God bless you for going down that path and forging it, because we need it. But man,
they should coexist. It's just not something we're used to.
It's not something you're used to. Yeah. I mean, wouldn't it be nice to walk into City Hall and you have a whatever experience, a Nordstrom's experience?
You walk out and go, that was very pleasant.
Yeah.
Not that paying a parking ticket or a speeding ticket's probably expected to be pleasant, but
hey,
at least be nice to say like, hey, it was annoying that I had to do that, but at least it was painless to do.
I'm glad the efficiency was faster.
Yeah,
right? Like
exactly.
Because I was having pains because I got a pulled over for a violation on my tag. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh my gosh, this takes forever. And you're right, Tami. It's like I'm already late. Now you're making me even more late. Let's get this customer experience moving.
Yeah, no doubt.
Anyway.
Well, and I appreciate also that Tami brought up this idea of the interconnectivity that's available out there, and also. I tell you, if you're a VAR and you're thinking, hey, I want to sell this stuff and DACRA sounds interesting to me, just go back and listen to Tami talking about, all the little processes and steps they can do to get from the beginning of a ticket all the way to the end. Mm-hmm. Because in that, there's a million questions that you can easily go and do that consultative selling and asking questions about, hey, how long does a typical stop take? Mm-hmm. How difficult is it gathering the stuff you need for a hearing? How long does it take folks to pay their bills, and where can they do that, and how can they do that? So many questions you could ask there that could very easily open that door to say, hey, you know what? It sounds like you could be doing better, and just a little tech would help out. Let me bring my friends over at DACRA over here to help out.
Right.
Good stuff. Very good stuff. All right. Well, hey, before we wrap things up and get to our value to the VAR for our VARs here, to give them a little sense of maybe some places they could get started looking at opportunities in local government.
All right.
As always, first of all, thanks to our TEConnect sponsors, those who sponsor our TEConnect program, the podcast directly. We appreciate your support of the show. We could not do this without you. And we know Zebra, for instance, is a close partner with DACRA.
Yes, they are.
They're the ones who brought them to our attention and suggested we have Tami on the show. So
Thank you, Zebra.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Hey, as always, if you like the show, hopefully you're, telling us that you like the show.
Yeah, right. You can
If
do that
you're-
easily.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, you could hit the like button. You could leave a comment about the episode.
That's right. Yeah.
You can subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Give us a rating on the pod.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially if you're an Apple Podcast or Spotify listener where you can leave ratings and reviews there, do that. We appreciate those. That, again, lets us know. We've talked about this before. Sometimes Dean and I can be out places and someone will come to us and say, hey, I love the podcast. Like, great. Did you leave a review?
Yeah.
Come on.
Or they'll start pitching me on an idea. Did you give that to us? No.
Exactly.
Well, you don't get your shirt.
There you go. If you've got an idea for the show, there's always a link in the podcast show notes to give us a submission to any kind of a topic, an industry, a certain company you want us to talk to. Someone like Tami, for instance, you're like, hey, I think so-and-so would be a great guest for the pod. Send us that stuff. Go to that site. Drop a suggestion there. Just for doing so, we'll send you a t-shirt.
There you go.
Even if we don't use your idea, we will send you a t-shirt just for giving us an idea.
Yeah.
Because we need them. We like them. And we want to hear from you. And as always, if you want to stay in touch with us, you can always find us on Twitter at TEConnectPod. You can also email us TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, let's wrap things up here. First of all, let's talk about our value to the VAR.
Yes, sir.
This is kind of our way of giving a little takeaway to our VAR audience. Hey, of all the stuff you've heard about today, what's something you can do with it right now?
Yep.
So, Tami, I'll let you kick this off here. So, is there any low-hanging fruit out there for helping communities to modernize and to find this new technology and to get out of some of these antiquated practices? Where can VARs be focusing their attention, asking questions, digging in to maybe find some easy ways that they can get involved in government and help improve processes?
Yeah, good question. So, a lot of times when we're looking at a customer, the easiest customer, the lowest hanging fruit is somebody that has zero technology in there, right? So then we implement the software, we implement the hardware. The other opportunity is customers that currently have outdated hardware. They don't realize that the software or the hardware that they have really isn't the latest and the greatest out there. And the reason is, you want to make sure for speed, using scanners, you want to ask them, what are you currently using? What do you like about it? What's not working for you? And sometimes they get so focused, Zebra printers are workhorses, right? They work fantastic. And so when I onboard a municipality, I say, what are you using? Oh, we're using ZQ 520s. I say, great, there's a new 521. Yeah, so they don't know the new features because they're not having, issues with this, which is great. I mean, that's great that the Zebra puts out such a great printer, but, you want to give those opportunities to them. One of the questions you can help ask a community is, how many softwares are you currently using? And find out, are they using 3 different siloed softwares? Would they like to be on one platform? For 4-inch printers in squad cars or 8-inch printers in squad cars, police officers issue 2 types of tickets: moving violations, which are usually state tickets, and then adjudication tickets. Many times they're using 2 software products. That just delays the officer. So if he's issuing a state ticket and an adjudication ticket, he's logging out of one software, logging into another. So a good low-hanging fruit question is, how many softwares are you using to issue a ticket? And not only from the issuance, but again, all the way through that process. That's one way to go in and tackle, whether it's a new account. And again, I think those are always easy, providing the value of making streamlining situations, especially when people are shorthanded, talking about, in order for that clerk to do her job, it's taking her so long. The software is going to help her so that she can do the rest of the 10 items on her to-do list. So looking at the opportunities of where we can streamline workflows, make the process better, and keep them compliant.
Yeah, which is all good stuff.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
All things we're looking to try to solve as solutions integrators. So, yeah. I can see that. And the focus is there, especially, on the efficiency, right? I mean, to your point where we started the whole conversation around the staffing and the need to have, it's really hard to go out there and find people to do the work that needs to be done. So if you're walking in there with one of your, hey, I can make this a much more efficient process, you're going to, you're winning right out of the gate. Right. So.
And I think too, like this is one of those situations where you are kind of the consumer of sorts too. You're the customer if you want in a way, because
not kind of in a way you are.
Yeah, that again, if you're working within your own community and even with others too. But think about the things that frustrate you. Think about, hey, the last time I had to get a ticket, and the time it took to get the ticket, the time it took to pay the ticket, where I had to go and what I had to do. Maybe you decided to go to a hearing and all of that was, a debacle, or again, maybe you work in, or you had to get a building code for something or whatever to put a deck or something like that. I don't know. Any situation where you have had to deal with government and found something frustrating, that to me as a VAR would say like, hey, maybe this is something that I could help them fix.
Right.
Maybe I should go have a conversation about that. Or if you're working outside of your own community in other communities, maybe it's having a conversation about, hey, I know what it's like. I got a ticket the other day and I was trying to figure out how to pay it, and it was a nightmare. I had to drive all the way down here, or I had to mail this in there, and
the clerk wasn't there.
Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of stuff that helps create those kind of relatable conversations that you can have with someone to help them say like, look, I get it from that side, and I understand also from your side what you're probably dealing with too. Let's talk about how we can solve this together.
Fair enough.
That's where I would assume you're going to find some nice low hanging fruit.
Yes.
And another thing too, if you know somebody who works in government, sit down with them and have a conversation. You're like, hey, what frustrates you about your day-to-day work and the technology you have to use? Because I promise you, they're going to probably tell you quite a few things.
Well, sit down. You probably need a beer or a glass of wine, because it's going to take a little while.
Exactly. Let's go out to dinner. Let's have some drinks, and we'll talk all about it. So.
That's right.
All right. Well, let's wrap up then with our favorite segment of each week.
Yes.
It's What's TEConnecting with You.
Yeah.
This is where we get to talk about something in the world of science, tech, innovation, business. Something that's caught our eye, got our attention that, we just feel like talking about today.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
Tami, we'll let you kick off here. What's TEConnecting with You right now?
Yeah, so I'm really working hard on looking at real estate in the squad car. And what I mean by that is, real estate in the squad car for hardware is pretty minimal. Right. So we need to have the laptop or the MDT in there. We need to have the printers in there. We need to have the scanner. So looking at technology that's all encompassing, and there's a lot of great things out there for helping keep that squad car real estate, concise, and using barcode scanners a lot more, or QR codes. So we're utilizing those, as I said earlier, on payments, but also when people check into a hearing, if they have their notice with them or their ticket with them, just scanning it and checking it in. We're trying to make sure that we can automate as much as the process as possible. So I'm really keeping my eye on, scanning equipment. Did a lot of great learning recently at a BlueStar event, and really brought that back and helped our development team, incorporate some of that barcode scanning and QR code technology onto our notices and tickets.
Brownie points for connecting your TEConnect with our, ecosystem and what we do on a daily basis. Yeah, absolutely.
Long live the barcode scanner.
Long live, yes. And we've talked about QR codes and where they're going and how they're revolutionizing a lot of what we do. So good stuff.
I do find myself actually utilizing those more than I used to, because I feel like for a while everyone was slapping QR codes on stuff, but
just to be
but there really wasn't a lot of education about why people should be using them or how to use them. I remember for a long time thinking, like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do with that thing, even though it was simple as just taking my phone out of my pocket and taking a picture. And now, like, you see them on commercials,
everywhere.
You see them in movie theaters,
you're watching the local news. Scan this for more information.
Exactly. So I'm glad we're at a point where people actually understand what those are and what to do with them. All right, what's TEConnecting with You?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think if we try to pull the few positive things out of the pandemic, one is that people now, as you said, John, know how to use a barcode scanner or a QR code where they didn't before. So it's nice to transition that. I still enjoy going to a restaurant, and people are no longer looking for a menu; they're looking for the code to scan. We want that with the government space as well.
There you go. Yeah. I like it.
All right, here's what's TEConnecting with me. Well, recently I upgraded my home internet.
Okay.
Because they came around and they installed the fiber. And I was originally the curmudgeoned old man, like, why are they digging up my yard? And
then you got it and realized, like, this is nice.
Oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
All right. Like, half the price and 4 times the speed that, now my kids are no longer. So anyway, this headline.
You weren't yelling, get off my lawn anymore?
Well, I'm still yelling that because I'm still pissed that they went anyway. But I'm comforted
Just
now that I
accept
have
your
it.
high-speed internet and stop complaining.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the headline. Researchers set record for data transmission rates, 1.8 petabytes per second. Roughly twice the global internet traffic was transmitted in 1 second. This is exactly. Wow. This is the new record. So you may. So first off, what's a petabyte?
Yeah, exactly.
It's even hard to get your head around that. A petabyte is 1,000,000 gigabits. So whatever that is, however many billions and trillions of
a lot
gigabits.
more than our little brains can
Think,
process.
the whole global traffic can be transmitted in a second. I mean, come on.
That's insane.
How are they doing this? Actually, it's pretty simple. You know, when I read them further, I'm like, duh. So they're taking a single laser chip or a single laser and they're projecting it on a chip. But what they're doing is they're diving into the light spectrum. So they're dividing the light spectrum into thousands of frequencies, right? I mean, light has all these frequencies, and then they're transmitting on all of those. So, so it's like genius. Yes, of course. So in one beam, you can have thousands of different frequencies transmitting data on thousands of different channels, right? Wow. And so now you just need the chipset that can decode all those. So it's basically doing the work of literally thousands of lasers. The old school way would have been to say, well, we got to line up 10,000 lasers, and we got to shoot them all at one chip. And no, that's not going to happen. So they're just dividing up the spectrum. So there you go. So data transmission. I mean, I really think this is going to be like a non-issue in like 5, 10, and that I can get my head around. You know, the quantum one that I brought up the other day.
Yeah,
where
that was a little harder to manage.
Yeah, I still don't understand that. I went back, reread it 3-4 times. I'm like, no, you can't just make stuff pop out of nowhere. Anyway, so that's what's TEConnecting with me. What do you got there, John?
All right. Well, going from one sort of industry and government that's slow to modernize, let's talk about another one here, which is local news.
Yes.
In particular, I mean, not just your local news stations, but also newspapers too. In particular, I'm tying this to Facebook and their parent company, Meta, because like a lot of tech companies, they recently had a significant amount of layoffs.
Yeah, sure.
And it seems for Facebook in particular that a lot of those layoffs are centered around a desire to move away from having anything to do with news on their platform. So there's been some concern about this, obviously. But and basically some of the folks that got laid off included, let me pull up this article here real quick, the Meta Journalism Project Accelerators program manager, a local news, the head of local news partnerships for the platform, head of news partnerships for Southeast Asia, program manager for news, 2 program managers for news integrity, and multiple news communications jobs. So it kind of seems to imply that Meta and in particular Facebook as a platform are kind of backing away from being really involved in news necessarily, which is one of those things where at first I read that and I was just like, was that a bad thing? Because we've had so many issues with disinformation and weird news floating around on Facebook that causes problems anyway. But when you stop and think about it, there's a lot of people who get all of their news from Facebook or other social media platforms.
Yeah, but it's another, go ahead.
And there's also other countries where Facebook is a very predominant form of news, for folks that don't have, or maybe there's state-sponsored media or something, that doesn't deliver news that maybe they get from other outlets instead. So, and also local news, newspapers are dying and becoming archaic. People just aren't really reading local newspapers anymore. A lot of people, don't know what's happening locally as much. If they're not tuning into their nightly news, where they're only get a small fraction of what might be happening.
Oh, yeah.
So, this kind of may be a bad thing. And there's another interesting segment of this article that stood out to me, which was talking about, let me find it here real quick, some of the funding and where it was going. So they kind of mentioned that, Facebook had committed to some funding, especially during the pandemic, to help out local news organizations. And granted, it wasn't as much as you might think, but there was some organizations that were kept alive by this assistance and what they were doing and what they were helping out with. But what I found was interesting here is I was talking about some of the layoffs. Said they had promised $300 million in support of local journalism back in 2019. They've shifted sources away from the news tab, shuttered the bulletin newsletter program, ended support for instant articles, eliminated human curation in favor of algorithms, and stopped paying U.S. publishers to use their news content. I think the curation algorithm thing is the one that really kind of stood out to me as this is kind of scary because we've all kind of learned, I think, especially in the last
Algorithms can go rogue.
Yeah, especially in the last 5-10 years or so, that algorithms may not be the best way to disseminate information when people learn how to game it, especially.
Yeah,
so if you're suggesting, like, rather than having people curate the news that
they're
should
going
be,
all in on that.
Yeah, exactly.
On
so
the other.
a little alarming. I mean, my first suggestion to folks would be like, don't use Facebook as your primary news aggregator. Frankly,
right, okay, and that's what it is. It's an aggregator, right?
Right,
Facebook
exactly.
doesn't make news.
No,
but they're
no,
aggregating the
exactly.
sources, and they're feeding what they think, right?
Yeah.
Through their algorithms, what you should
Exactly.
say. Yeah.
And it's also a little scary to think that there's a lot of local news organizations that maybe were relying on some of the
I did not
funding
know
or
that.
payment.
Right, yeah.
And granted, again, a lot of the money that Facebook supposedly has been investing in these organizations, a lot of it's really been more into marketing that they're doing this rather than actually going to the organization. So they're not making a lot of money off of it. But I'm sure some folks were being propped up at least or assisted by this.
For Facebook, it's all about keeping people in the app.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
serving local news, that would be a way. I don't think it's going away.
So
but
apparently you're not going to get much news on Facebook anymore. It's going to be just, more memes and puppy videos and that stuff that your weird uncle said that you don't really want to see. Yeah.
Great.
So that's what's TEConnecting.
Even less reason to log on to Facebook.
Yeah,
But anyway.
no doubt.
Yeah.
Tami Wanless from DACRA, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Tami.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Dean. And thanks again, Zebra, for bringing this to the table.
Yep.
Definitely. Hey, until next time, it is time for us to unplug. But hey, maybe go read a local newspaper.
All right.
And send a petabyte of information across the internet somewhere.
Maybe if you get a speeding ticket and it's really efficient, thank DACRA.
There you go. That's it exactly. I like that. And as always, folks, please stay connected. TEConnect podcast is brought to you by ELO. All right, Dean, we just talked about the idea of self-service in governments and municipalities.
Right.
And
Make it more efficient.
yeah, being able to go in and pay your ticket or do whatever you need to do at a kiosk stand. Well, guess who's really good at kiosks?
ELO.
Yeah.
Yes.
Self-service has never been easier. Introducing ELO's Wallaby Pro kiosk stand. The Wallaby Pro is changing the industry by making it easier than ever to configure interactive self-service solutions. Choose from wall, counter, and floor models. Engineer with configurations to fit any space in retail, restaurants, hospitality, healthcare, corporate environments. I'm going to say government entities as well.
Why not? Yeah.
The local courthouse.
I mean, this is the pro model for crying out loud.
Yeah,
I can go
exactly.
anywhere. Yeah.
Just add a 22, 24, or 27-inch touchscreen display. All right, looking for more options, though?
Yes, sir.
I mean, you don't want to just a kiosk.
No,
I mean, come on.
no.
You
I
can
got to
do
put
more than that.
peripherals.
That's right. How about a custom branded backer board?
Love it. Okay, yeah.
Ceiling pole to minimize footprint.
Easy. Yes. Okay, got it.
What about adding a printer?
Needed.
ADA keyboard.
Yes.
Assist button.
Yes.
Use ELO's Edge Connect to attach any of these accessories and those
boom.
too. And the Wallaby Pro stand offers easy-to-access concealed housing for a power strip, power bricks, compute devices, cables, whatever you need.
Clean design,
Yeah.
baby.
They've got this covered here, I think.
I think so.
So if you're ready to help your customers design the most customizable self-service solutions, start with the Wallaby Pro. Contact your ELO representative to learn more. The TEConnect podcast is also brought to you by Zebra. Print better.
Yes.
Print smarter.
Yes.
Print safer.
Yes.
What is there unsafe printing?
Come on. There
Like
can
paper
be.
cuts, maybe?
Right.
Or
Well, no,
I know
Yeah,
it means
yeah,
something
yeah,
different. I get it.
Yeah,
I'm being slapsticky. That's the motto of Zebra's ZD series of 2-inch compact desktop printers. Designed for a small footprint but big performance, the ZD series is simple to set up and use with easy integration, management, and security options.
Nice.
Among the wide variety of configuration sizes and options for any customer needs are the ZD411 Advanced, ZD611 Premium with color touch display option, and 611R RFID printers.
Nice.
All feature next-gen technology engineered to grow with businesses. I mean, Tami was talking about, if you recall on the podcast, going in and seeing some old hardware and saying, hey, guess
Absolutely.
what? There's something new and even better out there. These could be the new
Let
and even
me
better.
show you what we got.
There
That's
you
right.
go. Check out the link in the show notes for more on each ZD series printer type.